Thank you, everyone. My name is Paul Sonnier. I'm honored to be here. I'd like to thank the Korea Health Industry Development Institute, and thank you, and Chosunbiz for the kind invitation. I'm going to be speaking to you about the digital health revolution today, and I've seen my picture posted around and in newspapers, so it's a little bit startling. Hopefully I can live up to your expectations today. Okay, so I'm going to start out telling you a little bit more about me. I'm going to present a short digital health video animation, talk about some of the problems you heard in healthcare that digital health addresses, and also give you a quick investment overview, provide some example solutions, and give you the big picture of digital health. Oops, hopefully I didn't. So this is my Twitter page. So I have nearly 30, thank you. This one's better than this one. So I have nearly 30,000 followers, and actually I kind of like it over here. Also I have a LinkedIn group, as you heard about. It has nearly 40,000 people from around the world, and I send out weekly announcements, curating news from around the globe on digital health, putting my analysis and insights into what's happening so people can get an idea of how the state of digital health is progressing. I also am a social entrepreneur from this work. I'm a strategy consultant as well, and I'm an advisor to Pathway Genomics, a genomics testing company in San Diego. I previously served on the World Economic Forum's Global Agenda Council for Digital Health, and worked at the Wireless Life Sciences Alliance, a trade industry group, and also worked at the X Prize on the Nokia Sensing X Challenge competition. And I'm in La Jolla, California, San Diego. You can see that big wave. That's not me riding it. I'm a surfer, but I did take that picture. I was safely on the beach that day. So this is just a sample of my influence in social media for digital health. #1 for digital health, #1 for wearable tech, also highly ranked in IoT. And I'm also someone who doctors actually follow on Twitter, just to give you an idea of my influence. So a couple of acknowledgments. Eric Topol, Dr. Eric Topol is someone who's very well known in this space. He was the first to encapsulate the digital revolution with the genomic revolutions and portray those and accurately describe those as the key drivers right now for the changes happening in healthcare around the world. And also J. Craig Venter, who's one of the first people to sequence the human genome, his own in fact, and also has described, has said that we are basically DNA-driven software machines, and that there's no difference between digital code and genetic code. Digital code is binary, ones and zeros. Genetic code is four basic code, ACGT. So basically, those two individuals have really captured what digital health is for me. And so this is how I've defined it. It's digital health is the convergence of the digital and genomic revolutions with health, healthcare, living, and society. So I've expanded that beyond just healthcare and medicine, because as we know, consumer health products are very relevant to health and healthcare. And living in society, as we'll cover in a minute, is very critical. Digital health influences that quite a bit, as we know. So this is a short video, 2 minutes.
I'm often asked, what is digital health? In simple terms, digital health is the convergence of both the digital and genetics revolutions with health and healthcare. The essential elements of digital health include wireless devices, hardware sensors and software sensing technologies, microprocessors and integrated circuits, the internet, social networking, mobile and body area networks, health information technology, genomics, and personal genetic information. The underlying lexicon of digital health is extensive and includes all or simply the digital and/or health-related elements of mHealth, also known as mobile health, wireless health, Health 2.0, eHealth, Health IT, big data, health data, cloud computing, e-patients, quantified self and self-tracking, wearable computing, gamification, telehealth and telemedicine, precision medicine and personalized medicine, plus connected health. As we are seeing and experiencing, Digital health is empowering us to better track, manage, and improve our own and our family's health. Digital health is also helping to make healthcare delivery more efficient, improve access, reduce costs, increase quality, and make medicine much more personalized and precise. This is an incredibly exciting time. I encourage you to learn more about digital health, try for yourself any of the many solutions available to consumers and healthcare workers, and catalyze the digital health revolution. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Sonnier, join my digital health group on LinkedIn, and subscribe to the Story of Digital Health newsletter at storyofdigitalhealth.com.
Okay, so you see digital health is quite broad. The lexicon, a lot of health innovation terms out there. Every single one of them has digital as part of it. So basically I've synthesized all of those into really an overarching term. So some of the problems being addressed in healthcare, as we heard earlier from the distinguished speakers, healthcare in the U.S. alone is $3 trillion per year right now. Globally, it's quite a bit bigger. Some of the key drivers, according to the Centers for Disease Control in the United States, 86%, they say, of the costs of healthcare are due to chronic diseases. So these are behavior-based diseases. So diabetes, obesity, heart disease, cancer, and mental health is projected by the World Health Organization to be a $6 trillion cost in healthcare and lost economic activity by 2030. So you can see that's quite large. And sleep, just insomnia alone is a $100 billion cost in the United States. That's not to mention the medical issues with sleep apnea and the like. And there are also comorbidities related to sleep, which can impact other conditions. Readmissions in the U.S. is $30 billion a year. That's when people go into the hospital, they leave, and they have to come back in when an issue arises. And then, of course, as you heard, the aging population, as of 2010, it was about 13% in the United States, and that percentage is projected to grow to 20% by 2025. So you can see these are the primary areas where digital health can help. So some of the key risk factors in chronic diseases, the top ones are physical inactivity, excessive alcohol consumption, tobacco use, secondhand smoke, poor diet, and then related to those often is high blood pressure, a high body mass index, and a high concentration of fats or lipids in the blood. So with the digital revolution, the genomic revolution, these major costs driving healthcare and issues for people's health, there's an inevitable disruption taking place in healthcare. 70% of healthcare organizations around the world will be investing in digital health by 2018. That's, of course, apps, wearables, remote monitoring, and virtual care, telehealth. And then there are over 7,000 startups around the globe focused on this. So that's pretty big activity. And as of last year, 2014, nearly $7 billion was put into these startups. And the four main areas were aging, oncology, cardiology, and diabetes. So when we look at oncology, that also includes precision medicine, genetics, and genomics in a large proportion. And then 50% of that $7 billion was focused on the aging market. So you can see that a lot of effort is being put into addressing that demographic. And then wearable tech, $1 billion invested. So that's a major indication of how wearable tech is significant for our health, especially moving forward. So this is a chart showing just the trend from 2010 in digital health investing. This is by Startup Health. I started my LinkedIn group in 2009, and when I first started sending out announcements, there wasn't a lot of news. Fast forward to the last couple of years, every week there's multiple stories from around the world that are noteworthy. And interestingly enough, I mentioned $7 billion last year invested in digital health startups, over 500 deals. Contrast that with the life sciences, biotech and medical devices, which saw $8.6 billion. So digital health is actually comparable almost to the traditional life sciences investing, pharmaceutical included in that. So that's noteworthy, and it's worth keeping in mind as far as the global trend what's happening. So this is a snapshot of how digital is impacting our lives. 7 billion people on the planet, about 3 billion use the internet, 2 billion use social media. Half of us have smartphones or cell phones, and of us that have those, 1.7 billion are using social media on them. And as you probably are well aware, smartphone use in Korea is 84% of the population. In the US, it's quite a bit lower, 64%. Smartphones are integral, of course, for apps versus feature phones. And when I talked about living in society, the internet actually increases our sociability, our civic engagement, and the intensity of family and friendship relationships. So the internet is important to living in society. So let's take a look at one social network. This is 500,000 members, doctors, nurses, EMTs, global. And unlike other social networks focused on the doctors and clinicians, this one is actually used to crowdsource diagnosing patient issues. So you could almost say it's a human version of artificial intelligence, the IBM Watson. And the patients are anonymous. As you can see, they black out the face. They do that automatically in some cases too. This is another social network focused on patients. There's some that are larger. This one is Patients Like Me. It has 200,000 members and 1,500 disease communities. And again, getting back to crowdsourcing, this is where patients get together, share news about or information about their condition, what worked, what didn't work, and they help one another to improve outcomes. And these kind of platforms are also great for clinical trial enrollment because you can identify people who have a condition and enroll them much easier, identify them much easier. So let's look at the world of apps. So the IMS Institute for Healthcare Informatics just came out with a report saying there are 165,000 digital health apps in the app stores. So that's Android, iOS. That's 8.6 of the total apps in the stores. 85% of those are focused on wellness and disease management, 15% on straight health information. And of a sample of 2,000 or 26,000, excuse me, 36 apps accounted for half the downloads. So you can see even there's a wide variety of apps out there, a very small percentage accounting for most of the downloads. 10% of those connect to a device or sensor, and then 34% connect to social media, which, as we covered, can be very important to our health, helping one another and sharing information. And then over on the right side, you can see diet and fitness accounts for the majority of those apps, and then smoking, mental health, medication, and respiratory and diabetes. So a lot of the key risk factors for chronic disease are what these apps are focused on. And again, these aren't necessarily medical apps. These are consumer apps. So in 2014, these were the 10 most popular apps. You can see they're all focused on fitness and health. And what was interesting in this list is that if you look at MyFitnessPal, RunKeeper, and Map My Run, a company called Under Armour, which is like Nike, of course, probably everyone knows Under Armour. They acquired these companies, the 3 companies that run these. Actually, one rolls up into another one, and another one called Edomondo. So fitness, nutrition. So they acquired those and essentially became the world's largest digital health platform. And as you can see on this next slide, so they have 140 million people using these apps. Every month, 62 million of those people log in. So I mentioned fitness tracking, nutrition. There's a social network. And what this has done is created a tool for business growth for this company. They're expanding internationally. They're using digital health. Those are the 2 primary drivers of how they're growing very fast. And that's not to mention, of course, the health benefits. So it's kind of a win-win between industry and the consumer. So here's another app from 2014, 4 million downloads, Pregnancy Plus. So basically helping expectant mothers to manage their pregnancy, manage their health. So again, not medical. So if we look at the world of sleep, I mentioned insomnia is a $100 billion cost in the US. So this is a device called the S Plus. It's not a wearable. It's an RF sensing system. You put it beside your bed. I actually have one of these now and used it. And as compared to apps or wearables that track your sleep, it's much more accurate. For one, because if you have something on your arm shakes, does the app know if that's your breathing or what? So it has to use algorithms to try and guess. Well, this system, basically, using the RF sensor, the radio frequency, it uses Doppler to detect your breathing, your rate of breathing, and also your movement with high accuracy. And again, this is a consumer device by a medical company. And what's noteworthy about this, beyond just the accuracy, is that after a few weeks, if you're not sleeping well, it'll tell you to prompt you to download the report and take that to your physician. So this actually is, you wonder, well, is that a medical sort of diagnostic? And I was talking to the company the other day, and this falls within the FDA's discretionary oversight, as they call it. They recently came out with guidance on mobile medical apps. So the FDA looks at this and could come in and say, well, that's good or bad. But in this case, they're selling it. It's $150. It's non-contact, so you're not annoyed while you're sleeping. I've used it a couple times. I enjoyed it. I got really high scores, so the gentleman I talked to at the company said he was jealous. So it's a great device, and you can see when we're looking at sleep and the issues related to that, things like this and other solutions can help people to sleep better and help their health, of course. So mental health, as I mentioned, is a major issue. So meditation has been shown to improve our stress, reduce stress, improve relationships, can even help treat addiction. And then it can also have a physiological effect. It can help us reduce our heart rate, our blood pressure, and improve our respiration. And also neuroscientists say that it can change the shape of your brain. Hopefully that's in a good way. So this has had 3 million downloads. It's been funded about $34 million in the US by some famous movie celebrities and other investors. And so again, not medical, but it impacts consumer health. So this is a device called Think, and I actually have it here. And because I'm going pretty quick, I think I have time to show it to you if I can find it. There we go. So of course that's me pictured up there, you can't miss that. So this is the device, and basically what you do is you have it on this strip, which is sticky on the back to make contact. You attach it with the leads, it's very sticky. You put it on your head, if I can get this detached. There we go. So you put it there, and then this goes on, there we go, thank you. This goes on the back of your neck. And so placement is crucial. I don't know if this is okay. But essentially what this does is it puts a low amplitude, high frequency signal right on your peripheral nerves in your head and neck. And it doesn't go into the brain, so it's not transcranial. It's not meant for pain. It's a consumer device, so it's not medical. And really, I use this, and after about 10 minutes, they have a calming version. This is the calming strip. After 10 minutes, I was on the phone with the representative, and she asked me how I was feeling. She said, has your posture changed? I go, yeah, I'm actually like relaxed. I feel good. And she said, okay, that's great. And that feeling lasted for about an hour, 2 hours. And so obviously my stress was reduced. So you can see that, this can help with your mental health. It can help with your physiological health. And it's, it's very interesting. It's a new space. Of course, there's companies doing this for medical applications as well. And I mentioned, I think, that they also have another one that's focused on energy. And that one attaches right behind your ear and also on your temple. So very interesting stuff. And of course, they're using this same sort of technology, but more for the transcranial, direct current stimulation, and modulated current for mental conditions as well. Not this company, but just other companies that I'm aware of. So if we look at mental health again, gaming, this is a new app that actually uses a game as therapy for ADHD and autism and depression. It's not FDA cleared, so they're seeking that for what they call electronic medicine. And basically what it does is when the game players have to concentrate on the game as they're playing it, it helps their brain to manage these conditions. So they're doing clinical trials right now. They're also testing it to predict Alzheimer's. And I was talking to a vice president from Quintiles, the largest clinical research organization in the world. And he said right now, Alzheimer's, they can't really predict it. So this could be one tool in that regard, especially when you look at working with pharmaceutical industry as well. This can be an early detection system. And there's another company doing something similar for Alzheimer's prediction that's using virtual reality mazes. So they're using the Oculus Rift, which Facebook owns, to do mazes, and people navigate through them. And that what they found is that people have a genetic predisposition for Alzheimer's. They've actually discovered that those people go through the mazes differently than people that don't have that. So again, this is not cleared yet, but this is very interesting that you can use digital games for medical purposes. So telehealth, I think we're all aware of that, remote visits, virtual visits. So this is the leading telehealth company in the United States. It's a public company valued at $700 million. They just recently, about a month ago, passed 1 million visits on the platform. And so basically what this does, it's convenient for the patient, but what it also does is for the physician, for the healthcare system, it creates the model Dr. Joe Kvidar is called shift from 1 to 1, where you have one patient, one doctor, to 1 to many. So you can have many patients and you can have them treated in much more efficient manner versus having to come into the hospital, wait in the waiting room, all the inconvenience, the lost economic productivity. The physician maybe doesn't see as many patients. So this is representative of that opportunity. And there are a number of companies doing this. There's another one called Talkspace. An article came out the other day that where are all the mental health apps, especially for FDA cleared clinical. And this company tweeted me and said, hey, don't forget about us. And this article, this journalist had forgotten to mention them. So apparently they didn't do good research. So this company, basically it's online therapy. So they've got, I think they mentioned 250 therapists available. And they've seen, I think it was, well, on their website it says 70,000, but I think they said they've seen over 150,000 or more people. Online therapy, so you can talk to a therapist and address any mental health concerns you have. So again, this is telehealth is an important area of digital health. Heart disease, of course, as we know, is a major issue. This is an app that's called Hello Heart, and they recently came out and reported, for one, they had 50,000 downloads, and of a sample of 2,000 users, they found that 25% of those users were able to reduce their blood pressure by 22 points, which is significant, in particular because that correlates with a 50% reduction in their heart attack risk. So this is a prevention measure. And notably, Apple Watch users, Wearable Tech, actually were 3.6, so it's nearly 4 times more likely to keep using the app versus if they were just using their cell phone or their iPad or something. I think it's just for iOS right now. So you can see the value that Wearable Tech plays in this space where it increases this use by consumers. And this is great for prevention. It's also great for managing a chronic disease that's already manifested. And the one thing about this app is that the people using it had to do a blood pressure cuff. So they had to do that themselves at home. And most of the blood pressure cuffs on the market right now are not digital. Some that are, few of those don't actually have data that will translate into the app for whatever reason. So that sort of can create that usability issue to where people are less likely to keep using the app. So in this case, that's an opportunity to improve that experience, which is a segue into this company here. So some of you may know of this company. It's called Scanadu. They're competing in and I'll do a demo here in a second. They're competing in an X Prize competition called the Qualcomm Tricorder X Prize. And basically, that's a competition to do vital measurements and diagnostics, similar to the Star Trek tricorder, medical tricorder from the TV series and movie series. So I'll do a demo here real quick. Can we go back to the slide first, if that's okay? Okay, I'll just do the demo then. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is so this is the app. I did a measurement earlier, so you can zoom in if you like. So I'm going to go to plus. And what this does is it measures 4 vitals. It measures blood pressure, cuffless, digital, and it measures your heart rate, your temperature, and your blood oxygen. So I'm going to turn it on the back there, so it's on. So then it says it's connecting. So once it connects, it'll tell me to put my finger up here. Okay. So then it says, okay, put it on my forehead. And I can't talk during this, but you'll see my EKG wave. Let's see how it works. So it shows the signal strength on the bottom. And lately it hasn't been that. Maybe I've gotten the sensors dirty. But so you can see on the bottom where it says fair. You really want that to say good or awesome or very good, because it has to get to 90%. So I don't think it's going to go in the right time frame, but that's okay. So that's my EKG on there. So this is, right now it's an investigational device, prototype. It's not FDA cleared. And they're doing 2 studies. One at Scripps Hospital, where Dr. Eric Topol is the head of the Scripps Translational Science Institute. So I'm going to close that, but if we can go back to the slide deck, please. Thank you. So as you can see, top right, cuffless blood pressure, heart rate monitoring, temperature, and your blood oxygen. And I've been using this device for about a week now. And what I've noticed is persistent low blood oxygen. You should be 90 or greater. And this is actually not my measurement. This is the CEO, the co-founder, Sam DeBrouwer. But I have a friend of mine who's a physician who I surf with, and he said, you should probably see a doctor about that. So this is an investigational device I'm trying out. You can imagine this being a consumer device. And it's sort of saying, hey, there may be a warning sign here. So obviously a little bit concerned, but I'm probably going to have that checked out. We'll see. And the company is also doing a urinalysis test. And this is a disposable test. And so what they'll do is the person will urinate in a cup, you dip the strip in it, and then you take a picture of it after the results have displayed from the strip. I guess the camera will recognize the different color changes and what those indicate. Many things it checks. So this is also Scanadu. So this is the CEO, the founder, Walter DeBrouwer. This was about a month ago in San Diego, I believe. He was showing Alibaba's Jack Ma, the Scout device, and testing it out. Now Alibaba, as you know, is probably the world's biggest e-commerce company, bigger than Amazon in the US, has over 300 million, I think 360 million users or registered users. Every day about 30 million deliveries. So with a device like this, you can imagine that having this level of diagnostic and vital sign measurement in the home for millions of people, convenient, easily accessible, you can actually create this consumerization of healthcare, where consumers are empowered to know more about themselves, hopefully monitor, prevent conditions, maybe seek out healthcare in a more efficient manner, obviously through telehealth. This information can be sent to the doctor. So this is a huge potential for scaling digital health. And there's other companies doing similar things, I should mention. So wearable tech. So we're all following wearable tech. It's exciting. As you can see on the left, there are many form factors. The most common, of course, are smartwatches and dedicated fitness devices, and many applications, medical, consumer. Industry right now is about $5 billion globally. That's projected to quadruple within the next 4 years. Different estimates vary to about 200, 300 million units. And if you compare that with the cell phone industry, it's projected to sell 1.6 billion smartphones in about 2019. So it's still smaller, but 300 million units, wearables, and the impact that can have. And I mentioned the Hello Heart app. I'm going to talk about a few more examples where the ubiquity of wearables for consumers and for medical applications has a profound implication for health and healthcare. So this is a dedicated digital health device called the Fitbit, probably pretty well known around the world. Public company, just went public, I think earlier this year. It's worth $6.4 billion, which shocked me and maybe many others. But that's probably due to the fact that they dominate the market. Obviously, Apple came into the market, and I'll cover them in the next slide. So that market share, 85%, may have gone down a little bit, maybe a lot. But since they've founded the company, they've sold 20 million devices, about 10 million are still in use. So we call that an abandonment rate of about 50%, which is noteworthy because I was talking to a Dr. Norman Swan from Australia for their healthcare industry event. I did an interview, and he asked me about this issue. If no one's going to use them, what does it matter? And that is a concern, but 10 million people are still using it. And that's not to mention that if someone goes into the hospital and they're discharged and they say, well, use this device to track how you move, maybe motivate you, connect with others, and that way we can, stay on top of the trends in how much you're staying active, which is of course important for health and especially if, for outcomes if you've had some sort of procedure, medical condition. So this is the Apple Watch. Obviously Samsung is another well-known player in the space. Just came out this year. I call it a general purpose wearable. They've sold, an estimate that just came out is they've sold between 5 and 6 million in that time frame. There's already 10,000 apps for it. I mentioned the Hello Heart app. Fitness tracking and heart rate are already built in, so it has the sensor built in. And it also integrates with healthcare systems. So they've got their health kit, which is a cloud, I think it's cloud system that they own. But basically what it does is it brings that consumer data into a healthcare system or hospital's EHR system. So physicians can look at the trends, how active is a patient, and also intervening with advice, behavioral intervention. They also have something that they call Research Kit, which is for clinical trials and enrollment. Right now I think they have about 8 different clinical trials that this is aided. And similar to patients like me, this helps with enrollment because you already have this user base out there and you can ask them what conditions they have perhaps or ping them and then enroll them and then they already have something to track them. This is not an Apple Watch, of course, this is something else. But very important here is that the abandonment rate is 6%. So 94% of those users still keep using it after they've got the device. So that's huge, especially compared to Fitbit, right? So now you could say Fitbit is probably going to converge and do smartwatches as well. I wouldn't be surprised. And then also important is that 83% say it contributes to their overall health. So this is not a dedicated digital health device, but 83% of the people using it say it's contributing to their health. And it creates a holistic framework around your health and well-being. So consumers become more aware, more educated about their health, take positive action to improve their health. So this is important as wearables become more used and more widespread. And actually the little animation there, so there's the picture up above is the stand-up alert. So every 2 hours, it'll prompt you to stand up. The CEO has talked about this, Tim Cook. And what researchers have found is that physical inactivity, as I mentioned, is an issue with chronic disease. But they've actually found that it can increase, they've found a direct correlation. It can increase your propensity, your risk of heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and even disability. Just sitting down like we're doing every day. So that little prompt alone, being used by millions of people, becomes a population health tool to reduce disease risk. And those 3 little rings, I don't own an Apple Watch, but I went into the store. So basically, you got to fill that circle out by the end of the day. So it shows you how much you stood up, how much you moved, I think, and how active you were. And the lady in the Apple store, of course, she's biased. She said, well, we compare it with one another and we compete and we see who's winning. So that's a social aspect of this. And I asked her if they had a social networking feature built in, and she said no, but that's probably likely. But then again, there are apps, aftermarket apps, that could have that same feature. So here's wearable tech for sports. So this is for surfing. You know, I mentioned I'm a surfer. So this basically counts your waves, your speed, how much you surfed. And for someone like me, or for any athlete who's in a particular sport, anything that helps you and motivates you and enhances that experience is probably likely to make you do it more, and maybe do it better and in a healthier way if that's appropriate. So, you know, again, the wearable tech space is very broad. So here's a wearable for chronic disease, FDA cleared. It's also an insertable sensor. Probably many of you have heard of this if you're in the medical space. It's called Dexcom. It's a continuous glucose monitor for diabetics. And what they have is actually FDA cleared to put that glucose reading, the trends, on your smartphone and also on an Apple Watch. So both those had to be cleared by the FDA. But again, as I mentioned, a device, a consumer device, serving a medical purpose, which is, you know, something that we haven't seen before that digital health is actually doing, which is very important because, as I mentioned, the Hello Heart app, the people who use the Apple Watch were much more likely to adhere to that plan than the ones who just used a cell phone or an iPad or tablet. So that's important. So remote cardiac monitoring, remote patient monitoring. The first for heart monitoring was the Holter monitor. It came out in the 1960s. Basically, it just recorded events. It was not wireless. Zio, I believe, as well, is not wireless. IntelliSense, top right, that is wireless. They just got clearance from the FDA to do remote patient monitoring at home with their device. CardioNet was I think the first in this space. I think it was early 2000s that they came out with a wireless telemetry for heart monitoring. Isantis is a startup in the UK. They're cleared for monitoring, but I don't think they do it remotely. And then the noteworthy one here on this page is LiveCore. So I was looking at another presenter's deck, and there's I forget the company, but that's doing a cuffless blood pressure monitor, I think, with a watch. So this is the LiveCore. I don't know if you remember the iPhone ECG, where you would put your thumbs on a little case, and it would do your ECG, and it would send that to a doctor. So this is the new version of that. It's a prototype. And basically, it's a replacement band for the Apple Watch. So the sensors are in there, and basically, the user, when prompted or on their own, can measure their ECG. And one of the other features that was mentioned at a conference in Los Angeles, USC Body Computing, by Dr. Dave Albert, is that if it notices your heart rate through the measurement, I think on probably the Apple Watch's own heart rate measurement, if it says, oh, well, you know, it's not looking good, you should do your ECG. So it'll actually intervene if it sees an issue. And then also with this, you can see probably the little voice. So that's actually a voice annotation that the patient can speak into the phone or the smartwatch and describe how they're feeling. And from what Dr. Albert said is the cardiologist can discern things about how the patient is feeling based on their voice. So you could almost say this is a virtual visit in some ways. So it takes it beyond the data, brings in a new layer of the patient's state of mind, if you will, and their voice and the tenor of their voice. I believe probably they'll do video at some point, or maybe on the phone itself. But again, an example of wearable tech and the broad applications of it, consumer and medical, and it converging, of course, as we heard earlier. So here's another wearable. It's a patch, but most noteworthy about this, it's called Proteus Digital Health. As you ingest the pill, it's got a sensor in it, tells the patch that you took the pill. So for medication adherence, which is important for a lot of conditions, this is a vital tool. Otsuka Pharmaceuticals and this company are partnering, and they just submitted to the FDA to be cleared for an antidepressant drug, Abilify, so that the doctor can know if the patient is adhering to their medication, which is probably very important, obviously very important. So imaging is another major area. This is one I sometimes don't pay attention to as much as I should because you don't see as many companies doing it. There's two companies on this slide. So one is Mobisante. As you can see, it's a small ultrasound device that hooks up to a smartphone. Just some stats, as you can see, in the US, over 125 million ultrasound scans are done per year. And with a device like this that can be done at the point of care, right where the doctor is with the patient, that's projected to save between, around $50 billion a year. And that's not to mention another 450 million imaging type studies that could be disrupted, particularly by the next device, which is, it's not released yet, the Mobisante is. This Butterfly network, and basically it's a silicon chip based. So as we know, once you put things on silicon, they become cheaper. And this actually becomes more accurate, and it can actually be used, reportedly, to put energy into tumor cells and treat those. And interestingly, 60% of the world has no ultrasound, and only 1% is point of care. And I've got 5 minutes left here. So data accessibility, so all this digital health data, so how do you make that accessible to physicians? So this is a company I work with. They've got a digital health platform that brings all that data together, integrates it, so a healthcare professional can see trends, can also intervene with lifestyle and diet interventions with a patient. Let's see if this works. There we go. So the genomic revolution, so a lot of areas under that banner. Precision wellness and precision medicine are particularly noteworthy. Angelina Jolie, famous actress, she a couple years ago, based on her cancer risk from her gene, her mutated gene BRCA1, and her family history of breast and ovarian cancer, elected to have a double mastectomy to drastically reduce that risk. So she didn't have the disease, she didn't have cancer, but she took this drastic intervention to reduce her risk. This is a company, I'm on the strategic advisory board for Pathway Genomics Corporation in San Diego. They do BRCA testing, gene testing. There's a number of genetic testing companies out there doing this. 1 in 8 women will be affected by breast cancer in their lifetime. So this is an important thing for women to become aware of this, and men too actually can get breast cancer. To be aware of this testing, to understand their risk, couple that with their family's history, and actually the Angelina, this time cover is called the Angelina Effect because when she came out, that increased awareness on the part of the public as to they could learn more about their bodies and their risk of disease by getting genetic testing. So this is something we don't talk as much about, but we probably should because it's profoundly important. Pathway also does cardiac and DNA insight. So again, based on, you can identify someone's risk based on their genetics of heart disease, and you can monitor that condition, and you can also intervene with lifestyle and diet. But also you can also do pharmacogenomics and optimize your medication therapies, so you can titrate drugs based on a person's genetic profile. So the big picture for digital health, so basically it's helping us to better track, manage, and improve our own and our family's health, live better, more productive lives, improve society. As I mentioned, the internet in particular helps in that regard, and reduces healthcare inefficiencies, as you recall from my animated video. It also improves access, reduces costs, and increases quality, and it makes medicine more personalized and precise. And that's not just precision medicine on the genetics and genomics side, that's also all this digital data, digital health data that we're creating. So when you bring that together, you can more precisely be treated, and also you can more precisely manage your own health. So this is an infographic visualizing all these concepts. So you can see on the left the digital and genomic revolutions. You can see the timeline with the cell phone, computer, internet, genetics. And in the middle is all those elements converging. And what that does, as I mentioned just a moment ago, is that helps with disease, helps diagnose it, helps us manage it, predict it, and prevent it. So those are all the things that I showed you. This is sort of all of that brought into one slide. Forgot the word for that, but so what I'll leave you with, 3 things you need to know about digital health. So as I mentioned, Jade Craig Venter said we're DNA-driven software machines, so we're all digital. You know, our bodies are digital, they're driven by digital. Business is digital, of course, as we know. Connective fiber of society is digital. Health and healthcare needs to move into alignment, period. So digital health is inevitable, as we're seeing, especially with consumers. There was a survey came out today, I think I read, that said 36% of consumers want to do digital health, but yet it's not accessible. So the healthcare system is not responding to what consumers are asking for. And then, probably as we know, and you'll see in subsequent presentations, the future's already here. So a lot of these solutions and the imaginations of what's possible, they're already here. It's just not very evenly distributed. So they're in different parts of the world. So hopefully I've helped you to see what's out there a little bit, and I'd be happy to take any questions at this time. Thank you.
네, 그럼 지금부터는 잠시 질의응답 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다. 질문 있으신 분은 손을 들어주시면 저희 스태프가 직접 마이크를 전달해 드리겠습니다. 손을 들고 질문 의사를 밝혀주시기 바라겠습니다.
Okay. No questions?
질문이 없으신가요?
아.
그렇다면 제가 질문이 있으신가요? 네, 이쪽으로 마이크를 좀 전달해 주시죠.
Hi, I heard that the clinic fund in U.S. is huge. What's the difference of trend between clinic fund and VC fund in U.S.?
Oh, funding?
Yes, I mean the investment trend
Okay.
or area.
You said, I heard VC funding. What was the first CLIA funding?
Yeah, the clinic funds
Clinic
such as
fund.
Mayo and Texas Medical Center.
Clinic, okay. You know, my understanding, and I think we'll have another presenter talk about that more in depth, is that, you know, I think the clinical funds probably aren't as big an amount of money, perhaps. But certainly what they bring to the equation is they have the hospital system, so they can test out and pilot the solutions more rapidly and cost efficiently. So I would say that's probably an important benefit. Of course, you know, there's a lot of relationships with venture capital funds and healthcare systems, similar with accelerators and incubators. But I think that probably does make a difference if you're trying to rapidly innovate and iterate a solution. Any other questions?
네, 이쪽에서 질문을 주시겠습니다. 마이크 전달해 주시죠.
I can't see.
I have another quick question. In comparison to states, one of the concerns we have here in Korea is the regulatory frameworks in adopting the digital healthcare. Can you kind of give us sort of snapshot of what's the current sort of regulatory framework, and also in light of the whole healthcare reforms that Obama administration has been trying to make some changes? How would that have affected the rise of the digital health in the States? And what do you see, to the extent you know about Korean healthcare system?
Right. Yeah.
What kind of advice you could give to some of the healthcare regulators that are attending in this conference?
Well, so, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, stimulated a lot of opportunities for startups in digital health. And then I think it was a year or two ago, the FDA came out with their guidance on mobile medical apps, as they call them. They also use the term digital health, but in this case, use mobile medical apps. And I mentioned the sleep device S Plus by ResMed. So what they're doing falls under that discretionary area. So what FDA tried to do is create a little bit of sort of clarity around the regulation for a lot of these innovations and what they would regulate or what they would stand back and monitor. And so advice for startups really is to, I think, stay informed and with the regulatory environment, what's happening. For instance, right now there's efforts, I think, in Congress, and also FDA is looking at clinical decision support. So things like artificial intelligence, big data, and that information that's brought to a physician, even I think you could say this digital health consumer data, how they use that. Is it making a diagnosis? What if you have an app for a pharmaceutical product? How does that get regulated? So there are some uncertainties, and I think it can be complex, but definitely if you're doing something that's pretty obviously a consumer device or solution, an app, you have a lot less hurdles to overcome and a lot less cost, because if you're doing something for the FDA, you got to do a clinical trial, which is very expensive, as we know. And then, of course, understanding, what other players are out there and doing other things. And, some are stealth, but I think we often see news. And obviously, I share this news every week, so follow me for what's happening.
네, 추가 질문을 많이 요청하고 계신데요. 네, 이쪽으로 마이크를 전달해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Thanks for excellent lecture.
Thank you.
Looking back the history of how the new business model or technology really disrupt the existing businesses, examples, iTunes for the music industry, Uber for, recently Uber for the, transportation, etc. So what advice would you give to the established healthcare industries, be it, medical devices industry or healthcare, pharmaceutical industries?
Well, I think you're right on the money that, the digital disrupted those industries, and it's disrupting healthcare. But as we talked about a second ago, the regulation, it's a little bit more complicated if you're doing something that is related to medicine or healthcare and patients, especially what you state around that. I think perhaps, I mentioned Fitbit and how well they've done. They're not making any medical claims, but yet it's for health and fitness. So I think you asked about the disruption. So basically all of it, especially the consumer stuff, is disrupting healthcare from the outside. I see comments almost every day. I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but there's some prominent physicians who are sort of dismissing wearables in healthcare, which I don't get, because unless they're looking at it just from the silo of medicine and healthcare, they're missing all this other stuff that's happening out there that's impacting people's health and that disease prevention. So if someone doesn't need to go into the hospital to get healthcare, then I guess maybe it doesn't impact healthcare, or at least healthcare doesn't have to do anything, perhaps. But ideally, you get everyone working together. So as I mentioned, Validic and other companies, and Apple and others, they want to get that data into the healthcare system so that it becomes a partnership. So definitely it's a little more complicated in this case.
네, 부족한 시간이 야속할 정도인데요. 추가적인 질문이 있으신 분은 잠시 뒤에 이어지는 커피 브레이크 타임을 통해서 개인적으로 질문해 주시는 게 좋을 것 같습니다. 이상으로 첫 번째 기조연설은 마치겠는데요. 오랜 시간 멋진 강연해 주신 폴 소니어 컨설턴트님께 다시 한번 큰 박수를 부탁드리겠습니다.
Thank you.